So what is composition in Java? So composition is again a specialized form of aggregation, and we can call this as a death relationship. Okay, it is a strong type of aggregation. So let's take again an example. So child object does not have their life cycle, and parent object deletes all the child object will also be deleted. So let's take an example of relationship between house and rooms. So house can contain multiple rooms. There is no independent life of room, and any room can not belongs to two different houses. If particular room is inside the particular house, so that particular room cannot belongs to two different houses. So if we delete the house, room will if we delete the house, room will automatically delete. Okay, so it is a strong type of aggregation, and there is a death relationship. If one particular object will delete, then other object will automatically delete. Okay, so next is we already discussed about object. So what is object cloning in Java? So object cloning in Java is the process of creating an exact copy of an object. We can say a clone of an object. Okay, so what is the purpose? It basically means the ability to create an object with similar state as the original object. To achieve this, Java provides a method. We have an inbuilt clone method to make use of this functionality. So this method creates a new instance of a class of the current object and then initialize all its fields with this exact same content of corresponding field. To object clone the marker interface, we have a java.lang.cloneable must be implemented to avoid any runtime exception. One thing you must notice, object clone is protected method, thus you need to override it. We already discussed if we have a protected method, so we need to override it. Okay. What is a copy constructor in Java? So copy constructor is a member function that is used to initialize an object using another object of the same class. So try to understand, copy constructor is a member function which is used to initialize an object. We want to initialize an object, but by using another object of the same class. Okay, so there is no need for copy constructor in Java since all objects are passed by reference. So there is no need of copy constructor. We can use this copy constructor in C++, but in Java there is no need of copy constructor, because in Java, since all objects are passed by reference, so Java does not even support automatic pass by value. Okay, so next is what is a constructor overloading in Java. There is a method overloading, but there is also a constructor overloading. So constructor overloading is a technique of adding any number of constructor to a class, each having a different parameter list. So we have a class named demo and we have a constructor demo. So there are two constructor. So just like same as method overloading, we can also implement constructor overloading, each having a different parameter list. So the compile use the number of parameter and their types in the list to differentiate the overloaded constructor. Okay, so I hope you understood. So how many types of memory areas are allocated by JVM? We already discussed about heap area and stack area, and we already discussed the difference between heap and stack area. So what are the different types of memory areas are allocated by JVM? So we have a class method area. So this area responsible to store per class structure such as the runtime, constant, pool, fields, method, data, and the code for method. And we also discussed about heap area. So it is the runtime data area in the memory in which the memory is allocated to the object. Okay, so this area is responsible for storage of per class structure and their fields, method, data, and code, and this is responsible for runtime area storage and allocated to the object. And this stores frames. It holds local variable, partial results, temporary results, and each thread has a private JVM stack created at the same time. Okay, and new frame is created each time a method is invoked. A frame is destroyed when its method invocation completes. So it is responsible for temporary storage. Okay, and program counter register, we have a PC register, contains the address of a JVM instruction currently being executed. And next we have a native method stack. It contains all the native method and all the native method used in the application. So if we want to use any neighboring programming language method and any library method inside our program, so we can use a native method, and that particular native method store in native method stack. So next is what is the default value of the local variable. So this question is also important. So local variables are not initialized to any default value, neither primitive nor objects. So local variable does not contain any default value and does not initialize to any default value. So what if I write static public void instead of public static void, and we can say what if we change the order of public static void, means the program compiles and run correctly because the order of specifier does not matter in Java. Okay, so if we change the order of specifier in Java, okay, so it doesn't matter. Okay, so next is what is the purpose of static methods and variables. Okay, we already discussed about static methods, variable, static class. So what is the purpose of static methods and variables? So the method of or variable define the statics are shared among all the objects of a class. Okay, so first and most important difference is static is a part of a class and not of object. Static only link and only is the part of a class, because we don't need any object to initialize static method, to initialize static object, static variable. So static variables are always stored in the class area and we don't need to create the object to access such variables. Therefore static is used in this case where we need to define variables or method which are common to all the object of a class. So let's take an example in a class simulating the collection of students in a college. The name of a college is a common attribute to all the students. Okay, therefore the college name will be defined as static. One time allocation and one time, okay, declaration. We don't need to declare again and again because college name is same for all students, so we can use static members. Okay, so what are the advantages of packages in Java? We already discussed about packages, so we already discussed about this. Okay, packages about name clashes, they provide easier access control, we can also have hidden class, and it is easier to locate the related class. We already discussed about advantages of packages in our previous slide. Okay, so what is the difference between object oriented programming language and object based programming language? This question is very important and this question is very confusing question also. So what is the difference between object oriented and object based programming language? So simple object oriented language we already discussed follow all the concept of OOPS, but whereas object based language does not follow all the concept of OOPS like inheritance and polymorphism. Okay, in object oriented language do not have the inbuilt objects, whereas object based language have the inbuilt object. For example, JavaScript has window object, so JavaScript is object based language. Okay, so examples of object oriented programming language are Java, C Sharp, Smalltalk, whereas examples of object based language are JavaScript or Visual Basic Script. Okay, I hope you understood what is the difference between object oriented and object based programming language. So does constructor return any value? So we already discussed about constructor. So yes, constructor implicitly return the current instance of the class, but you can't use an explicit return type and you can't define any return type with the constructor. All processes implicit and all processes are internal in the constructor. So we can say that yes, constructor implicitly returns the current instance, but you can't use any return type inside the constructor. So can you make a constructor final? No, constructor can't be final. So what will be the initial value of an object reference which is defined as an instance variable? So all object reference are initialized to be to null in Java. Okay, so is constructor inherited? No, constructor is not inherited. We can't use inheritance in constructor. So what do you understand by copy constructor in Java? We already discussed about copy constructor. Okay, so in our previous slide. So next question is what are the difference between the constructor and method? Okay, so we also discussed about constructor and method. Constructor is used to initialize state of an object and the method is used to expose the behavior of an object, and constructor must not have any return type and method have a return type. Constructor is invoked and called implicitly and is called explicitly, and Java compiler provides a default constructor but method is not provided by the compiler. Constructor name should be same and method name may or may not be same. Okay, and next is can we override the static method? No, we can't override static method. So what are the restrictions that are applied to the Java static method? We have Java static method. So what are the different restrictions? Java static method cannot use non-static data members or call the non-static method directly. Okay, and this and super cannot be used in static constant as they are non-static. Okay, so what is the static block? We already discussed about static method, static members, and so what is the static block? So static block is used to initialize the static data member. If we want to initialize static data member, so we can use static block. It is executed before the main method. It is always executed before the main method. Okay, and at the time of class loading. Okay, so there is a class name A2 and there is a static block. Okay, so before execution of main and before loading of class. Okay, at the time of class loading, first execute this initialize this static data member by using static block. Okay, so as you can see the output is static block is invoked and then hello main. Okay, so can we execute a program without main method? Yes, one of the ways to execute the program without the main method is using static block. We already discussed about static block, so we can use static block. And can we execute a program without main method? Okay, so what if the static modifier is removed from the signature of main method? So program compiles. However, at runtime it throws an error. No such method error, but program compiles. Okay, Next is what is the difference between static class method and instance method. Okay, so static or class method and instance method both are different. So static or class method is declared as a static is known as static method, and instance method is not declared as static and known as instance method. We don't need to create the object to call the static method for static, because it always relate to class, not relate to object. The object is required to call the instance method, and a non-static members cannot be exist in the static constant. We already discussed about this, and static and non-static both can be exist. And this is an example. We need to use static keyword to use static method, and don't need to write any static keyword. Okay, can we make constructor static? As we know that the static constant belongs to the class, not the object. Static method, static block, static variable always belong to the class, not the object. But constructor are invoked and called only by the object, only when the object is created. So there is no sense to make the constructor static. So if you try to do so, the compiler will show the compiler error. So next, can we make the abstract method static in Java? Can we make the abstract method static in Java? In Java, we make the abstract method static, it will become the part of the class. Okay, because if we use abstract method, because static methods, static variable always belong to the class. So if we use if we make abstract method static, so it will become the part of the class, and we can directly call it which is necessary. So calling an undefined method is completely useless, therefore it is not allowed. So can we declare the static variable and methods in a abstract class? So in this, can we make the abstract method static in Java? Now we discuss, can we declare the static variable and methods in an abstract class? So we are trying to understand this with the help of example. So yes, we can declare static variables and method in an abstract method. But as we know that there is no requirement to make the object to access the static constant context, therefore we can access the static constant declared inside the abstract class by using the name of a abstract class. So in this example, we have an abstract class named test. Okay, and we have two we have static member, static variable, and we also have a static method named test method. Okay, and there is a public class which extend this test class, this abstract class, and inside this main method, by using this test class, abstract class, we call this test method. Okay, test method, we are trying to call this invoke this test method. Okay, and in this we want to print hi, I am good, and in this we want to print I value. Okay, which is 102 inside this abstract class. Okay, so output is first hi, I am good, and this I equals to 102 value. So both statement will be print. Okay, because we can declare static variables and methods inside the abstract method, and we can also access that particular variable in our main method. Okay, but as we know, there is no requirement to make the object to access the static constant, therefore we can access the static constant declared inside the abstract class by using the name of the abstract class. So we need to use the name of that particular abstract class. Because of this name of this abstract class, we can use and we can access the particular member and particular method and variable of that particular abstract class. Okay, so I hope you understood. So what is the main use of this keyword? We already discussed about this keyword. So what is the actual use of this keyword? So this can be used to refer to the current class. We already discussed it, always talk about the current reference and current class instance variable, and this can be used to invoke current class method. Okay, it can be used to invoke the current class constructor, and this can be passed an argument in the method call. We can also pass an argument. Okay, and this can be passed an argument in the constructor call, and this can be used to return the current class instance from the method. But always talk about current class reference. Okay, so can we assign the reference to this variable? If we want to assign any reference to this variable, no, this cannot be assigned to any value, because it will always point to the current class. Okay, object, and this is a final reference in Java, or if we try to do so, the compiler error will be shown. So let's discuss this example. Okay, so we have a class named test, and we have a method. Okay, and we have a constructor. Okay, named test, and this method named test, and we give the reference to this variable to null, this variable reference to null, initialize with null, and printing statement is test class constructor called. Okay, test class. So inside this main method, we are we basically trying to call this test constructor from the main method. So we create an object and call this test constructor. So as you can see, it will throw an error. Error cannot assign a value to a final variable, this equal to null, because we already discussed this cannot be assigned to any value, and in this constructor we assign value to this way equals to null. Okay, because it will always point to the current class object. So it will always point to current class object, but we assign the value to this variable. That's why it will throw an error. If you try to do so, the compiler error will be shown. Okay, so can this keyword be used to refer static member? Yes, it is possible to use this keyword to refer a static member, because this is just a reference variable which refers to current class object. Okay, so as we know that it is unnecessary to access static variable through objects, therefore it is not the best practice to use this to refer static members. So in this example, as we can see, there is a class named test and we have a static member name I equals to 10 value, and we have a constructor, and we basically refer this static member. Okay, so in main method we create an object and call this test constructor, and inside this test constructor we refer static member. So output is 10, but it is not the best practice to use this to refer static member. Okay, so we can use and to refer static member by using this keyword. Okay, so what are the advantages of passing this into a method instead of a current class object itself? So if we are trying to pass this into a method instead of a current class, so what are the advantages? So as we know that this refers to the current class object, therefore it must be similar to current class object. So there can be two main advantages. First is this is a final variable. Okay, because it always refers to current class object, so this is always a final variable. Therefore this cannot be assigned to any new value, because its value and its reference is fixed. So that's why it is called final variable, and it cannot be assigned to any new value, whereas the current class object might not be final, but current class object might not be final and can be changed. So this can be used in the synchronized block. Okay, and this we can pass this into a method instead of a current class object itself. Okay, so why is multiple inheritance not supported? We already discussed about why multiple inheritance and already discussed about what is the actual problem and purpose. So let's take an example. So we have a class A and class B and class C. So child class C trying to extend both classes A and B, and we can say we have a class C which have two parent classes A and B. Okay, so in main method we create an object. Okay, and call the constructor C, default constructor, but we are trying to call this message method. Now which message method would be invoked? Because this same signature method, message method, is mentioned in both class and B. So there is a confusion. Since the compile time error are better than runtime error, Java renders compile time error if you inherit two classes. So whether you have the same method or different, there will be a compile time error. Okay, that's why Java does not support multiple inheritance in. Okay, I hope you understood. So we already discussed about what is aggregation and aggregation and composition. So aggregation relationship we already discussed. Aggregation is best described as a relationship. Okay, and composition we already discussed about composition and with example. Okay, so we also discussed about super keyword. So let's take a look at the example. So we have a class name animal, and we also have a class named dog, child class. This is a parent class, this is a child class, and extend this animal class. So there is a parent child relationship, and inside this dog class we have a method named dog, in which we are trying to print this statement dog is created. And in this main class we have a object D and call this dog method, dog constructor. So first output is animal is created and then dog is created, because inside this dog class, the class dog extends animal. If we use super is called the class constructor implicitly by the compiler if there is no super or this. Okay, so implicitly called super keyword, and first parent class statement will print animal is created, then dog class print will string. Okay, I hope you understood. So we already discussed about what are the main uses of super keywords. So super can be used to refer to the immediate parent class and call the immediate parent class method, and to call immediate parent class constructor. So what is the difference between this and super keyword? So super keyword always point to the parent class, whereas this always point to current class. So we already discussed about this and super in our previous slide. Okay, so can you use this and super both in a constructor? No, because this and super must be the first statement in the class. If we use this, so we need to use this statement in our class as a first statement and also for super. So we can't use both this and super in the class, both in our class constructor. As we can see in this example, we have a class named test, and we have a constructor test, and we trying to use both super and this, and then we have a statement, printing statement, test class objects created. In main method, when we create an object and call this constructor, and it will throw an error. Call to this must be first statement constructor, because this in this program is the second statement. Okay, that's why it will throw an error. Why is method overloading not possible by changing the return type? We already discussed about method overloading. We can implement method overloading by changing number of argument and by changing the number of type of data type of argument. But why we can't use method overloading and it is not possible by changing the return type? So in Java, method overloading is not possible by changing the return type of the program due to avoid the ambiguity and confusion. Because let's take the look at this example. So we have a class named adder, and we have a add method, static and add method, and we have two arguments, int a and int b, and return a plus b. And in second method, double add, we have int a int b and return this a plus b value. So in this main class, when we trying to compile and when we trying to call this add method and pass this value 11, so there is a confusion. Compiler will be confused and will be a ambiguity occur, because when we pass this value, so there will be a confusion and there will be a ambiguity, because by changing the return type of a argument, we can't apply method overloading, because in this method also we have two members, a and b, and in this method also we have two members, a and b. So we by changing the return type in Java, we can't use and we can't apply method overloading, because it will throw an error. And as you can see, method add int is already defined in the class adder, so there is ambiguity and there will be a confusion if you trying to use and trying to compile the program in which you are trying to use and changing the return type in Java and trying to implement method overloading. Okay, that's why we can't implement method overloading by changing the return type of a Java. Okay, so next is, can we overload the method by making them static? So no, we cannot overload the method by just applying the static keyword to them. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. We have a class named animal and we have a method named consume. Okay, and also a static method named consume. Okay, both method name is same. So we are trying to basically overload these both method. First is non-static method and second is static method. So in our main method, first we create an object. Okay, and then we call this method. Okay, we call this method name consume and pass value 10, and then again call this method consume and pass value 2. But in this we give the reference to by using this object, and in this we give the reference by using this animal class. Okay, so output is, it will throw an error, method consume int. Method consume int is already defined in class animal static void consume. Okay, so non-static method consume int cannot be referenced from a static constant. Basically we are trying to give the reference and non-static method reference to a static constant. So if you are trying to give the reference of non-static method to a static constant, so it will throw an error. Okay, because this consume method is of type static, and this of type non-static. So you are trying to give the reference of this non-static method by using this static constant. Okay, that's why it will throw an error. So can we overload the main method? Yes, we can have any number of main method in a Java program by using method overloading. Okay. So rules for method overloading, we already discussed. The method must have the same name in the parent class, and method must overriding. Rules for method overriding. So method must have the same name in the parent class, and method must have the same signature, and we have a easy relationship, child parent relationship between them. Okay. Can we override the static method? No, you can't override the static method because they are the part of a class, not the object. Okay. Can we override the private methods? No, we cannot override the private method because the scope of a private method we already discussed is limited to a class, and we cannot access them outside of the class. Okay. Why can we not override static method? So it is because the static method is a part of a class we already discussed, and it is bound within the class, where the instance method is bound within the object, and static gets memory in class area and instance get memory in a heap. That's why we can't apply override static method. Okay. So what is covariant return type? This question is also very important. So since Java 5, it is possible to override any method by changing the return type if the return type of a subclass overriding method is a subclass type. So it is known as covariant type. The covariant return type specifies that the return type may vary in the same direction as the subclass. So let's take a look at this example. So we have a class name A and also have a method, okay, get method, okay, which basically return this current instance value, and we have a child class named B which extend this A class parent class, and also have a method, this get method, and this also return this current class instance, this current method instance. So we have a message method, void method, and printing statement is welcome to covariant return type, and we have a main method, and we basically trying to call this class constructor and with this get method and this message method. So output is welcome to covariant return type. Okay, we have a different return type. Okay, in this method we have a return type of this current instance. Okay, and in this method we have a return type, and we can say we have not any return type. We basically print this statement. So we have not any return type in this method, so this is basically a covariant return type. So it is possible to override any method by changing the return type. Since Java 5, if the return type of subclass overriding method is a subclass type, okay, if both method are in this both subclass, okay, so we can override this method. Okay, what is the final variable? We already discussed about final variable is used to restrict the user from updating it. If we initialize final variable, we can't change its value. We can say final variable once assigned to a value can never be changed. So let's take a look at this example. We have a class named bike9, and we have a variable which is final, speed limit equals to 90, final variable, and we have a method named run, and speed limit equals to 400 in this method. So whenever we create an object and call this bike9 constructor, bike9 default constructor, and call this run method, so it will throw an error because we declare this method we already declared this variable as final, and in this method we are trying to modify the value of this final variable, so we can't change the value of the final variable. That's why it will throw in compile time error. Okay, so what is the final method? If we change any method to a final method, we can't override it. So we have a class bike class, and we have a method run method which is final, and we also have a class child class which is Honda. Okay, so in run method, okay, we have a printing statement running safely with 100 km/h, and in final void run method we have a printing statement running. So whenever we trying to call and invoke this method, first we create an object named Honda and call this Honda class constructor, child class constructor, and call this run method. So it will throw an error, okay, because we can't override it. Okay, so and we trying to override these both method, both have same name in child class and parent class. So what is the final class? If we make any class final, we can't inherit it any of the subclasses. So in this example, as you can see, it will throw an error. We have a parent class bike, and we have a child class this Honda one. We have the and parent class is final, so we can't inherit it, and we are trying to extend and inherit this parent class, so we can't inherit it to any of the subclasses. That's why it will throw an error. So can we declare a constructor as final? So constructor can never be declared as final because it is never inherited. Okay, we already discussed about in our previous slide, so it will throw an error. What is the difference between final method and abstract method? So main difference between the final and abstract is that the abstract method cannot be final, as we need to override them in the subclass to give its definition. Okay, so abstract method cannot be final. Okay, so can we declare an interface as final? No, we cannot declare an interface as final because the interface must be implemented. We need to give the implementation of the interface by some class to provide this definition. So if we declare interface as final, so we can't give the particular implementation of that interface. Therefore there is no sense to make an interface final. If you try to do so, the compiler will show an error.